After Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, this time it feels like it's personal. France's president taking on all comers in his annual address Monday to his ambassadors in Paris, insisting his man in Niamey is staying put, defying an ultimatum from Niger's coup leaders and ruing what Emmanuel Macron sees as wavering on the part of European and U.S. allies. Both France and the United States have troops stationed in Niger as part of the fight against jihadist insurgents. We'll ask about their differing approaches to a coup that's got President Mohamed Bazoum under house arrest. How effectively can France fight the narrative fueled by Russia of a meddling former colonial power that's to blame for Niger's current ills? The outcome matters, both to the citizens of what's one of the world's poorest nations and to neighbors wary of continued coup contagion. Talk last month of a West African regional intervention force has mostly gone quiet. So what will break the impasse? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking who blinks first between France and Niger's coup leaders. With us from Washington, Niger's ambassador to the United States, Kiari Liman Tinkeri. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Also in Washington, former U.S. ambassador to Niger, Bisa Williams, today senior fellow at Yale University's Jackson School of Global Affairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
From Brussels, Nina Willen is political scientist, professor at Lund University. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And with us, she's just back from the area, France 24 senior correspondent, Catherine Norris-Trent. How are you? The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. For all the French ambassadors in the room on Monday, it was the one following along by video link that got a special shout out from the president. His name is Sylvain Ité. He's staying at his post after the Sunday night expiration of that 48-hour ultimatum to leave Niger. Camille Delec has more.
The deadline has been and gone, but the French ambassador in Niger is staying put, President Emmanuel Macron has said. This after on Friday, the junta gave diplomat Sylvain Ité 48 hours to leave the country.
I think that our policy is correct. It's based on the courage of President Bazoum, on the commitment of our diplomats and our ambassador, who will stay despite pressure and despite illegal claims of authority, as well as on the efforts of our internal security forces and our army.
The European Union has also expressed its full support for Ité. The ambassador has not met Niger's new self-appointed government, in line with France's refusal to recognise the legitimacy of the unelected coup leaders. Macron warned that Niger's political crisis would have dire consequences for both the fight against terror in the region and the economy, cut off from international support in the wake of the power grab.
We must not give in to the narrative used by the coup leaders that consists of saying France has become the enemy. The problem of Nigerians today is the coup leaders. They put them in danger because they're abandoning the fight against terrorism and good economic policy as they're losing the international funding that was helping them develop. That is the reality, and if we don't come out and say it, who will?
Amid rumours of infighting, Bazoum's party released a statement on Monday calling on members to stand united and determined to fight the coup.
Yeah, we'll ask about opposition to the coup from within Niger. But first, let me begin with you, Catherine Norris-Trent. The words of Emmanuel Macron, how did they ring?
He seems very angry that the message isn't getting through. He seemed frustrated at several times during that speech, trying desperately to control the narrative, to make the narrative what he wants it to be, in that he wants people to decry the coup leaders and restore constitutional order of the democratically elected president. And he's frustrated, he feels, that that message isn't getting clearly across. It's getting lost in this, well, French bashing, really. But the problem is, I suppose, for him, that in staying there, in keeping the ambassador there and keeping the troops there, in not engaging, that reinforces this narrative of France. The look is not the one that he needs to change the narrative. So he's very frustrated that this situation has dragged on for more than a month now, and that it's become one of, we've seen these pictures of all these people out on the streets seemingly at pro-coup rallies. But he wants to bring the narrative back to, hang on, there's a democratically elected president who has been overturned here. So France would like to get back to the old constitutional order, but it's very difficult for Paris, given the anti-French sentiment, which is there. It's not all being whipped up by the coup leaders across the region. Let's face it, there are people who have an emotional and a visceral reaction to the former colonial power. And so France, Macron wants to play a role, but he's in a very difficult position to do so from where France is.
Chiari Limantiguri, you were appointed by Niger's president, who's under house arrest. Seem from your vantage point, is the French president helping or hurting Niger's cause by refusing that ultimatum to have his ambassador leave?
Oh, thank you. I don't think I have to say anything more than what he said himself, French president. I think appointing an ambassador is a sovereign issue, and I think the president has said it all. What I can say about this coup attempt is, number one, that 1 month after, we have unanimity of the international community, from AU to ECOWAS, from France to the United States of America, to call to full restoration of legitimately elected officials, President Bazoum, and all the rest of our democracy. We want our democracy to resume its normal functioning. Nothing more, nothing less. That's number one. Number two, why the international community is so unanimous? It's simply because the coup has no reason. But we know now that it has a goal. And the goal is now very clear. The goal is to secure, to rescue, and to sustain a corrupt system that Chiani is part of for 12 years. That's the goal of the coup. Media were very loud and clear that the trigger is the control of a parastatal that will exploit oil. Those who are living by embezzlement don't want to lose the control. And President Bazoum dared to stop it. He dares to start dismantling the corrupt system. That's why they want on coup against them. Number three, the fake narrative of the junta is also now clear. They're saying that ECOWAS want to go on war against Niger. Everybody now, number one, Niger is already fighting war. Of course, Chiani doesn't know that. He is, again, presidential guard. The army, they know they are losing people, and they are losing more people since this coup business, since they attempted this coup, than the last 6 months before. So Niger is on war. Number two, nobody wanted war. But what would be the cost of inaction? What the suffering for our people? People are suffering under sanction. Time has been given to the junta to release President Bazoum and all the institutions hostage so that sanction will be lifted. They didn't do that. They keep on trying to gain time. And some people are saying it cannot be forever. Number three, everybody asks a solution that is within our constitutional framework. So no transition, no any sort of ad hoc arrangement. It's back to our constitution, back to our elected officials, free President Bazoum, kept hostage, free our institution, and our democracy will resume. Within that, there are solutions. It can be amnesty is possible under our constitution. The parliament can vote a law of amnesty. People who want to go to asylum because they feel that they are wrong can go. But clearly the world is not now ready to accept one more coup, because what is at stake is not only Niger. Niger will be devastated as Burkina Faso is, as Mali is, but the rest of the world
all right,
is going to give sanctuary to the jihadists.
A principled stand there, Ambassador.
Give sanctuary to
A
the
principled
jihadists.
stand, Ambassador Liman Tingiri. But Bisa Williams, let me ask you, when you look at the facts on the ground, who is more isolated in their position? Is it President Macron with his strong words, or is it the coup leaders?
That's an interesting way that you pose the question. In fact, there has not been a lot of movement on either side at this point. Yes, President Macron was quite strong, quite vehement in his discourse, but he hasn't really changed his statement. He wants, from what I understand, a return to constitutional order. The junta hasn't said much and really hasn't done anything much either since holding President Bazoum hostage. So I think that they're both rather isolated. If your earlier question was, what should the French ambassador do? Maybe on the ground, there needs to be some kind of indication that really the present group of coup leaders are interested in a dialogue. The United States has sent their envoy there. That envoy, an ambassador, has not presented credentials, but has indicated that she is there to find out how much the current this junta group is willing to discuss, what they're going to dialogue, how they're going to get out of this situation. So I actually see that both sides are rather isolated because we haven't seen any kind of gesture at all.
And should that French ambassador stay or go?
Well, my view is that he follows the instructions of his boss, who's the president. The president says stay there. Staying there in and of itself doesn't have to distract from the main attention, in my view, which is how to get out of this impasse. Bazoum needs to be released. I think once you have Bazoum released, then you'll see a different kind of activity on all sides because people have something else to talk about. But until that happens, what difference really would that make if the French ambassador is at house arrest in his embassy or house arrest in his residence? The junta people don't really have to pay that much attention to him.
Nina Willen, we heard the Algerian foreign minister this Tuesday proposing a 6-month transition. The Algerians are clearly against any kind of military intervention. Your thoughts on how you break this stalemate, and is the French ambassador staying there a positive or a negative development?
Yeah, I think that you asked the question before, why was Macron so angry in his speech and why was he bitter? I think that one of the first reasons that he's angry is, of course, that France has lost its position as the lead nation in the Sahel with this coup. Because as long as Bazoum is not reinstated, then France is out of the Sahel. Bazoum has been the key ally for France since they left Mali. And we know that they've also been chased out from Burkina Faso and earlier from Mali and now then Niger. So if Bazoum is not reinstated, we already know that the junta has said that they want to cut basically both military and political collaboration with France, but not with the other international partners. So that means that France is the only partner to leave. And I think that's of course a very bitter realization for Macron to understand that and to hear that they lose their influence and their position in the region.
Yeah, Macron, and we can hear another clip of him now, bluntly telling African leaders first in his speech that they had wavered too much during previous coups, and that might be part of why this happened, before turning his ire, as you suggest, on France's Western allies.
And from Washington to other European capitals, I've heard voices, seen newspapers, read articles that tell us, don't overdo it. It's getting dangerous. No, we have to be clear, coherent, consistent. Otherwise, who will listen to us?
Nina Willen, who is he referring to when he talks about Europeans, first of all?
Well, the EU has clearly backed France. We saw that Joseph Borrell came out with a statement also suggesting that the ambassador, they're supporting the fact that the ambassador is staying. But there are other European actors who have been quite quiet during this coup. And we also know that Germany and Italy have suggested that they would prefer a diplomatic solution, so not standing behind a military intervention by ECOWAS.
And why is that? Why are the...
Well, I think that France has supported ECOWAS because they also need to show that they support regional leaders. We've already discussed that there is quite a lot of anti-French sentiments in the region. So for France to have a position at all and a status which is not considered as neo-colonial or neo-imperial, then they are supporting the regional leaders. And they stood by ECOWAS from the very beginning. When ECOWAS decided that they were going to threaten the use of force. And then we have the other camp, let's say, with some of the other European actors, but also the US, who have encouraged more of a negotiated solution and have clearly tried to put the issue or the possibility of use of force off the table, because we know that the use of force could risk a regional war, because 2 of ECOWAS members have said that they would see a military intervention as a declaration of war against their own state. So Mali and Burkina Faso declared that early on.
Chiara Di Montiguri, let's talk about the United States, which has not qualified this as a coup. What's your reaction?
I mean, the reaction my reaction is very simple. The United States has not qualified it as a coup because the United States doesn't want this coup to succeed. It's an attempt of coup. It's working to reverse it. It's working to restore legitimate institution. And I want to address a little bit the whole discourse about the diplomatic solution and so on. I mean, to have a diplomatic solution, if it means just to validate the coup, to get them away with it, it's not a solution. Then it's surrender.
But isn't the United States validating to a degree or recognizing the coup leaders by, as Bisa Williams was saying, sending an envoy, refraining from calling it a coup, which under U.S. legislation means they would have to sever all ties and pull their forces that are stationed there?
Yeah, the thing is, again, my reading of the position of the United States, and it's on the website of the White House and State Department, it's very clear that the goal pursued by the United States is full restoration of democracy, President Bazoum back to power, our democracy resuming its course. Now, discussion has been a preferred means, just because you don't start by using force. But even ECOWAS has never said that the use of force is a preferred option. But the preferred option for everybody, nobody wanted to go on war. You go on war only if there is war, and it's not about war here. It's about it's about getting the junta out of power. It's about restoring and securing and rescuing legitimate institution. But even that, it's use of force. We cannot talk about diplomatic solution, a realistic solution, which means you have to validate the coup, to let them get away with it, and to allow them to ransack the country for, regardless of the suffering of our people. You know that if the moment you say that, you stop aids for most of our partners, United States, but other partners, you will stop it. And how would we do? How would we do? Even the humanitarian exception that is accepted, they will ransack it because they have lived in corruption for 10 years. This general has been at the heart of corruption. So what is the meaning of diplomatic solution if it is just to surrender? The ECOWAS will not accept that. African will not accept that. It's enough is enough. You don't like a president, you take him hostage and you get away with it. This is not acceptable. Whatever says, countries that want to come to do regional war, look at their own internal situation. What means do they have beyond the rhetoric to do any war against anybody? They are not able to fight to protect even their territory. Half or two-thirds of their territory are under control of jihadists. We are doing much better than them when it comes to containing jihadists. These people will do regional war. That's, come on, we have to be serious.
All right, so let me bring in Bisa Williams on this. Let me bring in Bisa Williams on this. You heard the words of Emmanuel Macron, clearly angry at Washington and at European partners for wavering in that clip that you heard. What's your reaction?
Well, Macron is interpreting the U.S. stance that has said very clearly it supports the ECOWAS position as not parrying or not being the equal to France's position, which is yes, so let's go in and fight. The United States government has said that that an intervention on the part of ECOWAS should really be the very, very last resort, but that the United States will support ECOWAS decision making in the ECOWAS process. So France thinks perhaps that the United States needs to do more than that. Actually, that is saying a whole lot on part of the United States government because it has not come out clearly and said no to intervention. It has said we think African problems need to be solved with African solutions. ECOWAS is taking the lead in this region. We will support them.
Yeah, or you could say that it's because the Americans want to keep their military base in the north, want to be able to keep an eye on jihadist activity in the Sahel and in southern Libya. And if they have stronger language, they have to pack up and go.
You can say that, but you can also say what I said. I actually think that that the United States is very careful about all of its pronouncements. And there's no other way to read we support the position of ECOWAS than exactly what those words say when it's coming from the United States government. So I would caution that you not inject your own skepticism into what that means. The United States doesn't like to backtrack on its commitments.
Catherine Norris-Trent.
The US has said that, and then they've had a spokeswoman for the State Department coming out and saying, but we need to maintain our interest in the region, which a lot of people are also interpreting and saying, look, there's a big drone base. There's a US drone base in Agadez in northern Niger, from where they fly surveillance flights across the whole of the Sahel. And you're right, in southern Libya, it's a very valuable asset for them. So they're clearly in a difficult position. They clearly want to come out and say that they are... want to see the return to constitutional order, that they don't want to just go into dialogue or any acceptation of the coup leaders. That would be very difficult for them. But at the same time, they have their realpolitik, their needs on the ground. So they're trying to walk a fine line, and it's clearly not the fine line that Emmanuel Macron is trying to. They have different stances. So yes, they both say that they want a return to constitutional order, but they're balancing up different geopolitical needs in the region.
I just would like to put in, if I may,
Sure.
one idea to think about without totally contradicting what your previous speaker said. I think you need to evaluate. I think we all need to evaluate. Oh yes, okay. There's real estate. There's an investment in Niger that the United States government has made. But let's evaluate what's the payoff on that investment. How do any of you have an idea of how helpful that has actually been? I think one of the headaches, one of the bad memories that the United States government had when I was still in government was when the crisis hit Mali and there seemed to be an implosion of the Malian state. And the United States lost a lot of the equipment and material it had given to the Malian army at that time and the Malian government. There were lots of drones and visions of dollar signs going down the drain. So if you think that there's a reluctance, there might be a reluctance like, my goodness, we've made an investment here too. Is that going to go down the drain? Which is a different question from what your previous speaker said, that, oh, the actual intelligence or the value add of the drones themselves has been a lifesaver. Because if you look at what's happening in the Sahel, I would argue that if the point of those drones was to stop incursions from ISIS or stop incursions from AQIM, then Ask the Malians, has that been very helpful? Has that been very successful? Look at Libya. Is that reestablished as a real good? No. So I think you need to separate those two things. And I think that the decision that the United States government will make ultimately, if there is this tug of war about where should we stand ultimately, if ECOWAS is going to really intervene, will have to be a different kind of calculation of what have we gotten and what have we got to lose and what have we got to gain. So I think that's very important.
All right. There is, in the case of both the U.S. and France, weighing how much of a presence they have in the broader region. France has already closed its military base at the northern uranium mining town of Arlit. That's on top of a broader trend of downsizing in its former West African colonies over the last years. You can see in this map all the little French flags that are circled in red are areas where in the last 3 to 5 years there have been military bases that have closed. And we saw that accelerated by the rift with neighboring Mali. Right now, United Nations Blue Helmets, peacekeepers, 12,000 of them, are in the midst of a 6-month pullout from there as well. Nina Willen, the departure of these foreign forces, does that leave a power vacuum? What does it mean for Niger? What does it mean for the Sahel?
Power vacuums are usually not empty very, very long, and we know that from experience. And we've seen what it looks like in Mali, both since the French troops left, but already now the UN troops that have started to fold back and making one of these logistical nightmares again, trying to pack up 12,000 troops in 6 months and leave. And we've seen that the jihadist expansion, we saw that there was a UN report earlier this week saying that the jihadist, the ISIS in Mali had almost doubled during the past years. So clearly there is no power vacuum. It's taken over by jihadists as soon as troops are withdrawing.
So let me ask Ambassador Limantingiri, if all this is the case and what you stated earlier about all of that Niger has to lose with this coup, why then is France and the West so bad at making its case in the court of public opinion? Why are we seeing protests against the French presence? Why is this narrative that the French are to blame getting so much traction?
Okay. Again, I used to say that demonstration is not exactly a good substitute for election. It is not a substitute nowhere in the world. It shouldn't be in Africa. I'm not saying that people love France, or you have people who disagree. But it's in the ballots that you can know who is really the majority, who support what. When campaigning for becoming president, President Bazoum has never hidden his allies. He has been loud and clear that France, U.S., the Western, our traditional allies will be his allies for his term. This was very clear. So now, of course, as today, Reuters Monembo says, if you have lived in Africa, and you did, you know exactly that organizing a demonstration, taping it, and broadcasting it has nothing to do with popular support. The last polls by Afrobarometers show that 62% of people in Niger that do not say that democracy is perfect, but they prefer democracy. We are not claiming that our democracy is perfect. We are not claiming that. Nobody is claiming that. Nobody is saying that all Nigerians are happy with the outcome. But we are on the right track. We are working towards a better democracy. 62% prefer democratic rule than any other type of rule. So I think just using, again, and even if you go by the demonstration, you see that as time goes, they are less able to have people. The first time the junta organized a demonstration in the stadium, it was full. Last time, 20,000. In a stadium that can accommodate 35. And last time they tried to organize a demonstration in front of the French military. How many people were there? So I think we have to take it for what it is. The ballot, not the social media, not taped demonstration. So if there is issues because of generations, because of time, because people are hungry that public policy do not deliver development as they wish it to be, and that's true. In any of our countries, we have big development challenges, but we know that juntas and rhetoric are not the right answers. They never succeed, they fail everywhere, and as my colleague just before me said, now that they're in Niamey trying to protect themselves and to fool young people by rhetoric, jihadists are taking the territory. Jihadists will be ruling our rural areas, and that's more dangerous. Never forget that we have border with Libya. Mali doesn't. Burkina Faso doesn't. So if we allow that to succeed, they will keep Niamey trying to do what they know how to do, corruption, and then the country will fall under the jihadists. Is that what we want? So I don't think really over stressing on the French, U.S. Are not wanted. That's not true. If they were not wanted, why people at the first time voted for President Bazoum? He has never hidden it. So I think we have to take these things for what they really are. Yes, there are problems in urban areas. Young people, they are again impatient. They are disappointed with our development outcomes, and they seize any opportunity to be vocal about it. But it's not an issue that points to any kind of credible.
So you're suggesting solution. You're suggesting it's overblown, but what is real and what is a concern, not just in Niger, but all over West Africa, is the fact that you've had now in the last couple of years this succession of coups. And Catherine Norris-Trent, in the wake of the coup, you traveled to West Africa, and time has gone by, more than a month, as you were saying earlier. You went to Bodinga, that's in Nigeria's border state of Sokoto, to witness the impact of the shutdown of ties with Niger.
That's right. And we spoke to people there about how it was impacting their trade. You were seeing some of our pictures just on screen at a cattle market there. And for centuries, this has been a huge part of local economic life of these cattle traders coming from various countries, Niger, also from Burkina Faso, from Mali, to these livestock markets. And people are worried. They're telling us that its trade is sharply down. And also, you know, that they have very close links to communities across the border in Niger, and they adamantly oppose ECOWAS statements about threatening a military intervention. ECOWAS led by Nigeria's president at the moment. So we can listen to the leader of that cattle market there in Sokoto State, just telling us, first of all, that you know how bad the trade is for them and how worried they are about the prospect of military intervention.
The closing of the border really affected our business. Usually we'd have 3 times as many cattle here because people are no longer bringing them. Before, on a market day, we'd sell 900 cattle. All I want is peace talks that will end the conflict. We have families in Niger. If they use force, it will lead to a big loss of life.
Bisa Williams, what would you answer to that, to the director of that cattle market there?
No, he's described the accurate situation when you have the sanctions and the closing of the borders. These are Nigeria is not landlocked, but Niger is landlocked and Mali is landlocked. And of course, that's going to have a terrible effect. You think it's bad for the Nigerians in northern Nigeria. Just think how bad it is for the Nigerians. That's just an obvious truth. And actually, that is the objective of sanctions, to put pressure on the junta, in this case in Niger, to change what it's doing. Yeah, it's creating a lot of suffering. And you're right. There are the market person was right. There are direct family links. There are ethnic group links across all the borders with Nigeria as well as with Mali, and all of those people are affected.
Chiara Di Montiguri, they speak Hausa on both sides of the border. One of the early mediators after the coup is Nigeria's most powerful Muslim spiritual leader, the Sultan of Sokoto. At first, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu seemed to be in step with Emmanuel Macron's strong words. Now, not so much, it seems.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't noticed that much of inflection in the speak of President Tinubu. But what I can say about people being not happy, I mean, that's correct. People sometimes they look at their own situation and they point to consequences, not to look at causes. You know, sanctions were not taken ex nihilo out of nowhere. It's because a coup has happened without any reason, without any justification that sanctions were there. And unfortunately, sanctions will impact people. That's true. Now, there is we have a continuity between Niger and Nigeria. We have common languages. We share a lot of things. We even share Boko Haram. People have tend to forget that we share also Boko Haram, but we share also development issue. You know, we have the same fundamentals of demographic development. We have huge demographic growth in North Nigeria as well as in Niger, and that's where the bulk of youth comes, and that's where the youth unemployment is a big problem for us, and that's the deep explanation of all this demonstration that people see. It's because we have huge youth unemployment, disproportional youth unemployment. So they're unhappy, and any opportunity to show it, regardless of causes analysis, regardless of effectivity of solution, regardless of path to get out of it, any opportunity to demonstrate is a good one. That's not the reality we are living. And that's what Bazoum is trying to fight by focusing on education, on girl education, trying to change the fundamentals of the society, not just to describe it as, yes, they have traditional authorities, they have common language, they have historical trade, and so on and so on. But we have to change the society to grow, to develop, you know, to be less dependent, to increase the productivity in our country. And for that, you need education. You need to educate people. The less people are educated, the less they are able to foresee the situation for what it is, and to be productive, and to be good for themselves, for their community, and for the whole nation. They are very vulnerable to any type of adventure, to any type of rhetoric. That's exactly what President Bazoum is trying to reverse when this attempt of coup started.
So, Nina Willem, we've talked about a lot of players in this discussion. We've talked about the French, the Americans, the Germans, the Europeans, the West Africans, the Algerians. Who is going to be the one who can break this deadlock right now?
Yeah, that's not an easy question, right? And we've seen that the junta have been very reluctant to negotiate. They've been standing their ground. They have rejected negotiation attempts by ECOWAS, not just once, but twice or three times. And I think the junta leader General Chiani, he even made the speech after the ECOWAS delegation finally got to meet President Bazoum, stating that they were going to do a transition of maximum 3 years. So clearly reluctant to negotiate at all. And we shouldn't forget that a transition of 3 years is not option B for the junta. That's option A. That means that they get what they came for. So the junta has really stood their ground from the beginning. They have not been ready. Now they've said that they are ready to negotiate, but they have already nominated a new government mixed with civilians and military. They stated that they want a transition of 3 years, and they made it clear that they are going to reject and forcefully any type of military intervention. So they're not ready to negotiate whatsoever. And so far, it seems very hard to make them change that stance.
Catherine Ross-Trent, Nina Willen there describing it as though, well, the junta's sitting pretty right now.
Well, it's clear that they're not moving very much. That I would agree with. It's really difficult to see where it goes from here. I think, as we've touched on early on in the debate, the positions are entrenched. People are waiting to see who makes the next move. No one really seems to want to make the next move. Maybe no one can. It's been more than a month now since the coup in Niger, and it's an impasse. And I really don't know which way to predict that this would go from here. I mean, there are, as you outlined, a great deal of players here. There are a great deal of geopolitical positions and interests. It's a complex picture, and it's at an impasse. So hopefully some diplomacy will work somewhere rather than this spiraling into some kind of messy conflict in a very already poor area of West Africa and the Sahel. But we don't know which way this will go from here, I think is the honest answer.
Bisa Williams, when you were posted as U.S. ambassador to Niger, did it seem as fragile as it does now? I mean, we heard Chiari Limantingiri earlier describe the coup as basically a man who was about to be fired getting one up on his boss.
Right. Well, the irony of your question is that when I was posted to Niger, there was a military government in place, but it was the government of Salou Djibo who pushed President Tanja out of office because Tanja wanted to undo the constitution. And the military said, no, we've decided on democratic rule. We'll give the political parties a year to get their act together because the Nigerian people want civilian government. They want democratic government. So 10 years later, here we are. Did it seem to be fragile? No, there were lots of, well, under Issoufou's government then, at the time, the first mandate at least, there was a lot of outreach all over the country. There were these caravans for reconciliation. The government was mixed, taking from various parties as well as from various ethnic groups. And Niger seemed to be slowly but surely making its way up. But I will say the second mandate, and it was quite common knowledge, the second mandate of President Issoufou seemed to be a little less effective and also much more obviously corrupt. There were, I'm sure, other governments, but I made demarches to that effect. And people were becoming a little bit more vocal with their dissatisfaction. However, I will admit that I certainly did not look at that as fragility. I actually looked at it as a strengthening of things because people were coming to the fore and saying what they believed in. With the election of Bazoum, it's true. There was this sense that, wow, Bazoum has never had the reputation of being a very corrupt person. He's always been really clear about all of his positions. You know exactly where he stands and why. So there seemed to be this hopefulness, I will say, at his inauguration and in the first year after his inauguration. It's a difficult place. It's a difficult place to govern. It's a difficult place to live. And yes, I was beginning to hear. I was just in Niger in June, and that month, I heard complaints from the business sector, and they're the kind of complaints that said, Bazoum isn't being given the leeway he's supposed to have as president. And we'll see what happens because there's too much of an old guard left over. No, I must say that I missed this kind of fragility, and I actually think what we're seeing, this junta or this attempted coup, really, really is the manifestation of some very internal, personalized grievances that have very little to do with what were the aspirations of the Nigerian people. But
let's hope that it gets back on track. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. I want to thank you so much, Ambassador Williams. I want to thank Ambassador Kiari Liman Tingiri for both being with us from Washington. Nina Willen in Brussels. Catherine Norris Trent. More on our website, france24.com.